All right, up and at 'em, everyone. It is a Monday morning here in Western New York, October 27th, 2025. The Baker Fairburn Hockey Show is back here. It's been a interesting weekend of hockey in Saberland. I'm here, Kris Baker, your host. You can find me on X at Sabres Prospects. Here, as always, with Matthew Fairburn, your Sabres beat writer for The Athletic. You can find all of Matthew's work at theathletic.com/Sabres. He's been busy as always, and we'll get into some of the details of what he's been writing about. Before we begin today, if you could please, if you're watching on YouTube, like this video, subscribe to the Sabres Prospects YouTube channel, and hit that notification bell so you know when a video drops, or you know when Matthew and I go live. You can find the Baker Fairburn Hockey Show on Apple, Spotify, any other podcast app that you use out there. You can find us. And if you would please follow the show, download the episodes, and leave a 5-star review. All right, Matthew Fairburn, let's just dive right into it. The Sabres take 3 or 4 points over the weekend from their home and home series with the Maple Leafs on Friday. They get a 5-3 victory on home ice. Mattias Samuelsson popping off for a pair of goals. Yuri Kulik, Tage Thompson, Alex Tuck, each with a goal and an assist, while Alex Lyon continued his fine play in the Sabres crease with 31 saves to get the victory. Teams get right back at it on Saturday. Thompson scores twice. Good to see Tage getting going here. After a slower start, Matthew Fairburn, Sabres get a seeing eye shot from Bo Byram as well to get a goal. UPL takes the net on Saturday, making his season debut, 18 saves in a 4-3 overtime loss at Scotiabank Place. Matthew Fairburn, you were on site for that. Really loving, would love to hear your observations from Saturday's game. But first, let's just kind of set the table. So the Sabres are now 4-4-1 early in the season, tied with Ottawa for 4th place in the division, neutral goal differential. Couple games coming up again this week. Tuesday at home against Columbus. Thursday, they're on the road in Boston. Buffalo, by the way, 0-2-1 on the road to start this year. But it was a home-heavy start. So when the schedule came out and you looked at how things were laid out, we knew that the Sabres had a good amount of games at home to start the year. And here they are, a 500 team through 9 games. Should the Sabres be happy with that start in the big picture here, Matthew Fairburn? I want to pass it over to you to get your thoughts.
I would say yes. Given the expectations of this team, given the injuries that they've dealt with, and given the fact that they started 0-3, being 4-4-1 is okay in my book. Now, you could say that maybe they shouldn't have started 0-3, right? That's certainly part of this, but I think if you take all the context, especially starting 0-3 with the injuries, the early adversity, they could have gotten to 0-4 or 1-5 really quickly, and they didn't. They are tied, like you said, with the Senators and the Leafs at 4-4-1. And so is there a little bit of an element of maybe a missed opportunity because other teams in the division have started slow? I think you could make that case, but the way they're playing is a big part of why I say they should be okay with 4-4-1, because they're playing almost, to your point, the even goal differential. Like, it feels like they could be better than 4-4-1, and it doesn't feel like a mirage that they're 4-4-1, which is a good sign. I think they're going to be, or they have a chance to be, the competitive hockey team that we thought they were going to be, and they are still not even close to healthy, really. I mean, Michael Kesselring's out, Josh Norris obviously out for a little bit, Justin Danforth going to be out for a bit, Greenway isn't back yet, Tyson Kozak went down with an injury, one of the depth guys that was filling in and making things work throughout all these injuries. And, Colton Ellis went down on Saturday, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen had to make his first start. He'd been dealing with an injury. So health-wise, they're still not where they would like to be. So I think I'm all right with 4-4-1.
Yeah, and we talked about it last week. What do you want out of this weekend set with Toronto? You want 4 if you can get them, and 3 of 4 is a good number. They walk away with 3 of 4, but 4 of 4 was gettable. So I think we should probably talk about the Friday and Saturday contests as a whole. I think with probably a greater emphasis on the Saturday, the most recent taste that we have left in our mouth with the Sabres team. And I think we should probably start with the goaltending because it was kind of a surprise. We talked about it last week. I thought that there was going to be an opportunity, especially since they brought Luukkonen back up from his conditioning stint where he had one start down in Rochester, where they would purposely, with intention, eye one of those games to get him the net. And they did on Saturday, but it doesn't sound like that was the plan. So what did you see from Luukkonen? And let's just talk about the goaltending situation again now with Colton Ellis scheduled to get the start, but back tightness, I believe, was what happened with him that didn't allow him to play, and Lindy Ruff had to deviate from his plan. So let's just start with Luukkonen's performance as a whole.
Yeah, so they did plan to start Colton Ellis. It's important context because it helps you wrap your head around Luukkonen's, what Luukkonen was thrown into, essentially. Ellis was supposed to start. They sent him up early on Friday. The Sabres and Leafs obviously played on Friday night in Buffalo. So they wanted him to not be on the late bus, getting in late. Kind of a smart move, actually. Get him in early, get him a normal night of rest and sleep. He wakes up with back tightness, and they're trying to work it out. They thought he could push through it, but they didn't think it would be smart to have him push through it. So Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen gets thrown in seemingly when he wasn't quite expecting it and maybe a little bit on short notice. Probably found out sometime late morning maybe that Colton Ellis wasn't able to go. Maybe it was a little bit later than that. And that does matter because I think that's not an ideal spot for Luukkonen to be making his season debut, second half of a back-to-back. He was backing up on Friday, so he gets in late Friday night. I mean, that's how it happens a lot of times in the league, but,
Yep.
when he's not expecting it. And I would say it wasn't a great performance from Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, and I think he was pretty good and sort of, you know, it was uneventful for most of the game, which I thought is what you want from Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. I thought they played well in front of him. But what's going to stick with him, what's going to stick with Lindy Ruff, what's sticking with the fans is that third goal. Predominantly that third goal. And I think the fourth goal we could probably debate a little bit. But the third goal is one Luukkonen said he wants back, one Lindy Ruff said he'll want back, one that it was pretty obvious to anyone watching that he has to have that. They're up 3-2 in the third period with about 6-ish minutes left. And
Yep. A little over 6, I think.
I will say Dakota Joshua skates through the middle of the Sabres ice like untouched practically. There's a bunch of Sabres there. Josh Doan was close to him in pursuit, and then I think Tuck, didn't step into the lane. In fairness to the defending players, Joshua gets off like a turnaround. It's not like he got off a high danger opportunity there, so could they have knocked him off the puck? Yes. Did he get a high danger opportunity? No. Luukkonen may have been slightly screened, but he said afterwards that he didn't see the release of the shot, but it wasn't really an excuse. He should have been fighting for his ice, and he also probably didn't see it because it was like a turnaround shot. Seemed like it caught him by surprise. He was stabbing at the puck with the glove. It didn't look great. And all of a sudden you're in a 3-3 game. You're going to overtime. Botched play by the Sabres at one end with Quinn probably should have shot it. Power lost the puck. And then John Tavares comes down the other way on not quite a breakaway because Tage Thompson, skated hard to get back and kind of take away the middle of the ice a little bit. But it was still, he had all the time he needed to get set and take that shot, which was from about 24 feet out, right, near the face-off dot, maybe a little bit inside, and beat Luukkonen clean. Not an easy save, but I would throw it sort of not in the same category as the third goal, but throw it in the category of you want to make a big save, you need a big save. That's an opportunity to do it. In my mind,
Mhm.
I'm not, Luukkonen said after the game he feels like he cost the team a point. And, in a way he did. I'm not putting the whole game on Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. I thought the Sabres played well. I thought, they weren't perfect, but, you know, they had a chance to come out with the win. I put this in the category for Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen of major missed opportunity for him to step up, get a win. This is a guy who did not play well last season by pretty much any measure that you look at. Lost, I think, the trust of his coach late in the season because James Reimer, I'm just going by actions on that. James Reimer got the net a lot late in the season. And this is a chance to win back that trust, win the trust of your teammates who are probably feeling really good about what they're getting out of Alex Lyon. And to a lesser extent, Colton Ellis, because it's one game. And I think nobody really knows exactly what they have yet in Colton Ellis. But a chance to come up big, start your season strong, and win back the trust of your coach at the very least, because I just get the sense that both based on how he talked before the game, I mean, based on the end of season, based on how Lindy Ruff talked before the game when Luukkonen came back up, essentially coming out and saying, we don't know if this guy can stay healthy, so we need to carry 3 goalies. And then
Yeah.
how he spoke after the game, confirming everything about Colton Ellis, basically saying they wanted him to be the guy that was in the net, and then saying they couldn't have played the third period any better. To me, big alarm bells going off that Luukkonen's going to has some work to do now to win back the trust of his coach.
Yeah, big alarm bells for sure, especially when you go back and you look at the past 2 years of Lindy Ruff being back in Buffalo, going back to his introductory press conference when asked by the media, maybe Paul Hamilton, about, do you have a goalie controversy or what's going on? And Lindy was emphatic. What did he say at that press conference?
He said, Paul Hamilton in jest was sort of like, well, for old time's sake, I got to ask you who your goalie is, because Lindy never reveals it in the morning of a game. And he said, well, I know 3 letters, UPL.
Yeah.
And times have changed. Put
It
it
was
that way.
emphatic. Yeah, it was. So, no, with Luukkonen, third goal, I think you nailed it. That's one that he has to see it all the way in and make the stop. Regardless, it's the NHL. Guys are going to get open. They're going to find open ice. Doesn't matter if it's, Nikita Kucherov or Dakota Joshua. Those guys are going to find open ice and get a shot on net. Luukkonen, I think, for a long time has had a propensity to kind of drop down early. So then you lose the ability to look over a screen. You have to look under a screen or around, when you're down. And he didn't do it. Stabbed at the puck. When Luukkonen, we've talked about it last year and maybe even 2 years ago on this show, when he's not fully dialed in, fully confident, he starts getting stabby with his glove. And that's what he did there. That was an alarm for me. The overtime goal, just my read on the play, Quinn has to shoot the puck. That right there, that whole sequence where then Power misplays it, it goes into the corner and the transition game starts really quickly. Luukkonen's not off the hook there, but you can certainly understand that it's going to be a more difficult play coming back than it should have been because all 3 guys were then below the dot on the Sabres. They had to retreat back. Tage, to your point earlier, makes that play where he's at center ice. He backtracks. So he turns around. He's not skating backwards. He's on his horse going back, but then he makes a play on the puck and misses it. A defenseman would probably stay with the man and try to go body on the man, and maybe it's a different outcome with Tavares getting a clean look on net. It's 50-50 from there. You do want to stop. I'm not going to hang that entirely on Luukkonen, that last goal. You do want to stop there, and it is. I think you capsulize it perfectly. It's a missed opportunity. I was out to dinner on Saturday for the game. By the way, great food, 1812 Tavern in Hamburg. Great food. Free plug.
First plug is free. Next one will cost you.
That's correct. my mom and my stepfather, they had risotto dishes. I had a risotto dish. My girlfriend had a Southwestern chicken sandwich. Awesome. Anyways, I could see some of the game. Like I saw Alex Tuck almost get his head knocked off. We should probably talk about that too. But I didn't, I wasn't dialed into the game. So got home, watched most of the third period, saw the end of the game in real time, read Your Gamer, read some other thoughts online. And before I went back, it sounded like maybe Luukkonen didn't have the greatest game. When I went back through the game, I thought that the Sabres played really well in front of him to start the game. He made some key saves at early. I think there was an early power play that he made a couple key stops on. He only had 5 shots in the first period. He only had 5 shots in the third period. Missed opportunity. So to kind of go back in the bigger picture, should they be happy with 500 through 9 games? Yes, but they still have some sorting things out to do. They still have some getting healthy work to do. But I like where the team's going. Alex Lyon is the savior of the team through 9 games. But when Alex Lyon can't go, what are they going to do? And that's going to be, I think, a storyline that you and I are going to talk about for the next couple of weeks, because Colton Ellis, I think there's fans in Buffalo that are frustrated with UPL, but we might not want to be, it might not be wise to be so dismissive of UPL. Got to keep an eye on Colton Ellis, this back thing.
Well, that's a big piece of it, right? All of a sudden,
Right?
he
Let's
wakes up
figure this
with
out.
back
Yeah.
tightness, which could be nothing, could be something, right? Anybody who's ever had a tight back could tell you that. He's young enough that you would hope it's nothing, but you never know if it could linger. I mean, he goes up early, he sleeps in a different hotel room, maybe he was in the car all day, but that's going to be the league, right? Like, you're going to be traveling, you're going to be in strange hotels, you're going to be getting in late. So who knows? There's that piece. There's the other piece that he's only played 1 game. And so I still think there's a degree of unknown there. I am sort of compartmentalizing this in 2 ways. Like, I wrote it this way in my story. It's like 2 things can be true. One is that wasn't really an ideal spot for Luukkonen. And 2 is that he could have been better. He had a chance to win them a game and he didn't. I guess the third thing I would say is that's also true is that doesn't mean that his Sabres career should be over and that he'll never play another good game for the Sabres again. But I think he has his work cut out for him to earn back the trust of Lindy Ruff. And I don't think it's going to happen overnight. But I think it's important also to consider the fact that Alex Lyon may not play this way all year. There's probably going to be some stretch where he needs a breather or isn't at his best. I mean, ideally, he would play this way all year, and that would relegate Luukkonen to a backup at best. And, maybe there's a different problem if Ellis continues to look like a really solid backup. But until you get to that point, I don't think you take 1 game in Toronto, which is his first game, 8 games into the season, given the circumstances. I don't think you take that game and, I hesitate to extrapolate the opinion of a few people and, generalize it to the entire fan base, obviously. But I don't think it's an uncommon thought that they should trade Luukkonen, right? Or, move on from Luukkonen. And it falls into the category of things we've talked about in years past when it was always trade Peyton Krebs, trade Henry Jokiharju, trade, X, Y, and Z. It's like, who wants them? Who's trading you something extremely valuable for Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen at this moment? Like, selling completely low on a goalie who still has almost 4 full years left on a contract that pays him $4.75 million, which isn't crazy. But why sell low when you might need him? If Colton Ellis's back isn't right, if Colton Ellis doesn't look as sharp in his second, third, and fourth games as he did in his first, if Alex Lyon falters at any point, like, Luukkonen, there's still potentially something there. And to take his first start as an indictment on him entirely, I understand he wasn't good last year. I get that. And so this is sort of a continuation of that. It's kind of like the 0-3 start for the Sabres. Normally you wouldn't, send up alarm bells over an 0-3 start, but it's the Sabres. It's the 14 years before that. It's the way they were playing, and it's the way this happened for Luukkonen. But I guess I'm not even trying really to be a Luukkonen apologist, because I wouldn't give him the net for a little bit here. I just don't think I would go back to him, especially with how the schedule sets up. But that said, let's not get too far ahead and completely write the guy off.
Yeah, did Luukkonen cost them a point? Yeah, I think I could see that argument. Is he the reason they lost the game in overtime? No. No, he's
No,
not.
and I think Luukkonen
No.
put it exactly right when he said, "I feel like I cost the team a point, and then the game gets to overtime, and it's a 50-50, it's a coin flip. It's always a coin flip in overtime." He makes that save on Tavares. There's nothing saying, you know, it's overtime. Overtime is a little crazy. So, like, him not making that save in overtime is a bit of a letdown, but, you know, they had numbers coming, like, would the rebound have gotten in? I don't know. It's the third goal that even allows it to get
Yep.
to overtime, because in that case, you were in a situation where you could have been getting 2 and Toronto gets none. And instead, Toronto gets 2 and you get 1. So that's a big swing. And now you're tied in the standings. Instead, you could have had an upper hand on them. You could have gotten 4 points out of the weekend. Just like I said, a missed opportunity where I don't know that his team, Tage Thompson was understanding. He's like, look, that he hasn't played, and also there weren't a lot of shots in this game. So, like, he's like, I'm not a goalie, but I imagine it was kind of hard to get into a rhythm. And there's plenty of reasons for why he wasn't particularly sharp, but it's going to be interesting to track going forward, because, like I said, I don't know when he gets the net again if Ellis is healthy. And so
Yeah.
the whole not being in rhythm thing, that's going to continue to be a challenge for Luukkonen. And you have to wonder a little bit, I think, at least something to monitor is Luukkonen's headspace overall, big picture. Think about his Sabres career and some of what he has dealt with. Now, he got the contract, so I'm not saying, we need to have a tremendous amount of sympathy for the situation here, but he got paid. That's the best way to show him that he's the guy. But he's constantly had to deal with, the idea that Devin Levi is the goalie of the future, which has come from management as much as it has the fan base. He's sort of this constant presence of, like,
Yeah.
this guy will replace me eventually, or this guy's the favorite of the general manager. And then, the bad luck of getting injured, and, another goalie gets claimed, and boom, all of a sudden he's sitting there at number 3, which is what he was at the beginning of his breakout season, which is easy to forget that Devin Levi started that season. Eric Comrie was the backup, and
Yeah.
Luukkonen only got thrown in when I believe both of them got hurt. Or at least Levi got hurt. I'm pretty sure Comrie got hurt too at some point. And so it was like, you know, all of a sudden Luukkonen gets thrown in, plays a pretty good game. But I bring this up just to say, like, all of this with Luukkonen, it seems like, and who knows how he felt at the end of last year with Reimer getting the net as much as he did. So,
Yeah.
it's like and you go back to the end of Levi's rookie season, and Luukkonen was just like not playing hardly any hockey. So, it was Levi and Craig Anderson were getting in, and there was 4 goalies. So that seems like it impacts Luukkonen's psyche, his performance, like his confidence. And so, is he the best for this, like, third wheel type of role? I think that remains to be seen.
Yeah. Devin Levi, by the way, 3-0 down in Rochester to start the year. 234 goals against. He's got a 908 save percentage. He can improve there and that number in aggregate, but a shutout in his last time out. So keep him going. I don't think that Levi is definitely part of the equation here. unless he really has to be. And that's where another layer of questions get answered, I think, on where does UPL really stand in this organization. Say Alex Lyon does, and by the way, let's just talk about all of them, right? Lyon's been around long enough where there's probably enough video on him. Teams know how to pre-scout him. So if he falls back down to earth, it's going to be just because he hasn't been managing, he doesn't manage the workload properly or whatever, right? Or the team mismanages his workload. They should be good there. We both, I think, shared the same sentiment last week when talking about Alex Lyon, that we can envision him maintaining a pretty high level of play, especially as the Sabres start gelling as a better defensive team, 5-man unit in front of them, and they get healthy, all that stuff. Ellis, it seems like minor stress. We have no reason to believe that there's a history with this guy having back problems, probably just minor stress. Could be days, but what if it isn't, right? Could be days, could be a couple weeks. We don't know. Could be longer. Who the hell knows, right? Something to keep an eye on. You mentioned that the schedule is set up pretty well right now for them to manage it properly, where UPL may not see the ice in a while. But then with Levi, again, I don't think that Kevin Adams wants to even think about bringing Levi up this year. But if he has to, if Ellis can't play and Luukkonen maybe gets the net, has another iffy start, then it's going to get really interesting.
Well, it'll be interesting, I think, less from Kevin Adams, where I feel like the Devin Levi situation has been driven by Kevin Adams a lot in his first few years, him getting onto the NHL roster, him, getting to basically, get games right away in both seasons. I wonder about it from Lindy Ruff, if the frustration with Luukkonen gets to him, to where if Ellis can't go, he's like, let's call up Levi, or I don't think they would go to Georgiev after the way the preseason ended, but if he does, try to bypass him in that way because he doesn't want him to see the net. I don't know that we'll get that answer immediately. So what they have,
Georgiev, by the way, a player that Lindy has history with.
that's true. I mean,
And it's probably the reason that Georgiev is even here.
and they, he did end up, reporting to Rochester and playing, and,
Yeah, he
he's
got a game in. He had a 31 save performance and a loss.
so they don't have a back-to-back again until the 12th and 13th of November. It's at Utah, at Colorado. So you would think that Ellis should be okay by then. They have Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday this week, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday next week. I think you could probably give Lyon all those games, right? I
Yeah.
don't see why not.
Yeah.
I also think, knowing Lindy Ruff's tendencies, he probably wants to give him all those games. Maybe Ellis is okay, and you're able to get him back into one of those games. So that would leave you, they have another back-to-back at the very end of November, the 28th and the 29th, Thanksgiving weekend, afternoon home game, road game in Minnesota on Saturday, the 29th. So it's not like you're going to play Lyon every game except the back-to-backs, but spots where you absolutely have to go to somebody else are limited. So it allows them to maybe extend the runway with Ellis a little bit, make sure he's 100% healthy, and avoid potentially going to Luukkonen. Also, by the way, I'm not saying I wouldn't trade Luukkonen if the right deal. There are some holes on this roster, especially with injuries. If you could
Yeah.
fill one of those with Luukkonen, I'm not opposed to that idea. I just don't know if now is the time to get the maximum return on this guy. I mean, teams have cap space and teams always have goalie issues. I think the benefit you would have putting him on the market would be teams would be like, maybe thinking it's a Buffalo thing, right? Get him out of Buffalo. Look what happened to Allmark. They would look at that season he had a couple years ago and maybe feel like Lindy Ruff felt when he came and just had the outsider's perspective. 3 letters, UPL, right? That was his guy. So maybe there's a little bit of that. I just don't know that it would be, there's term left on that contract. It's not a terrible contract for a goalie by any means. It's really not even like true number one goalie money. But my main reason for not bothering with that is A, you might need him, but B, who knows what you'd even get for him. But if you could fill a real hole on your team, especially up front, I wouldn't be totally opposed to the idea. But because I do feel good about where Lyon is at. I do. I mean, is he going to play right at this level all year long? Probably not. He'll probably have some off
Mm,
nights
we'll
at
see.
some point. But
Let's see.
I think he's got a chance to hang out near this level, you know.
Yeah, that's where I'm at
And
too with him.
I think why I think he can sustain it is there's been a few games where I feel like he hasn't been like a world beater. But even that game against Toronto on Friday, that breakaway he lets kind of squeak through his legs, which is, not ideal. But the thing with him is like the big save when you need it. That's what happened 2 games in a row for them, and it didn't happen on Saturday. But Colton Ellis on Wednesday makes the big save. They go down the other way. They get the insurance goal. And the same thing happens on Friday with Alex Lyon. Big save. And they go down the other way and get that goal from Tuck set up by Owen Power. Lyon made, a great save coming across to get that shot. So I like his leadership. I like the way he's, making timely saves in big moments. And overall, you look at his numbers, he's rock solid. So I have a certain level of faith that maybe if his baseline is just a touch lower than this, but I think this is what you're getting. This guy's ready to take advantage of his opportunity.
Goaltending is not necessarily about the saves you make. It's about the goals that you let in. And that, I think, is a proper place to stop the discussion right now. We've talked about goaltending here for nearly half an hour. Like this video, subscribe to the channel. We're going to keep going. Got to get some plugs in. Alex Tuck gets in a fight. Not a good showing, in my opinion, on that fight. Got spun around and almost got his head
That's
spun
tough.
around.
Yeah, I get
Yeah.
so nervous when he fights or when guys go down like that. Like, it's amazing to me that more of them don't hit their head on the
Mm-hmm.
ice, and he was really close in that, and he got tagged too by McCabe. Like, for him to come out of that unscathed is a major win, honestly. I
Yeah.
mean, forget whether he won the fight or not. He gets to jump in and stand up for his teammate, and as he said after game, he's like, I guess I was kind of the one answering. He's like, but to come out of it without an injury, for Ball and Byram, that
Yeah.
that happened, and I thought, what if they just lost both of those guys? There was a moment where that crossed my mind, and then I think it was later in the same period that Tage came off uncomfortable, and they went into that. Was that the first intermission? I think, yeah, it was, because Tuck was in the box for like the whole second period. And I was like wondering what was going to happen when they came out to the bench. Like, is Tuck going to be out there? Is Bo Byram going to be out there? Is Tage going to be out there? Like, 3 of your 6 best players, maybe 3 of your 5 best players. That would have been, but they finished the game. I mean, with head stuff, I guess you never, know what could pop up after the fact. But Tuck seemed fine. He was posting pictures from a Halloween party yesterday, so seems like he's in okay spirits. And Bo Byram, I think Bo Byram, the hit was definitely high and a little bit of a blind side. Byram had his head down, so some of that's on him a little bit, but with his history of concussions, I think it was just one of those that makes you stand at attention a little bit. Fortunate that they got out of it unscathed, and Tuck finished the game strong. Tuck was maybe, having 17 minutes off on the second half of a back-to-back helped him, he had his legs. He was a big part of that goal, standing net front with Josh Doan when Bo Byram snuck a shot through. So this team is one that will stand up for each other a little bit more than last year. and we haven't seen too many of those moments, but there's really no hesitation from Tuck in that moment. Maybe he should have had just a split second of hesitation to compose himself. He was so eager to jump in that he didn't get his gloves off and he got all spun around. That's the reason he got tagged the way he did. Maybe just take a quick breath, then jump in so that but he went right in. And I give him credit because he's always the one doing that. And you could say somebody else should have done it, but he was the one that was right there. So he
He
jumped
was
in and did
there.
it.
Yeah, I get nervous whenever those situations come up with Tuck just because he's not a very skilled pugilist.
No,
We've
he's not. It's not his. He's very willing. He's a willing combatant,
He's
but
willing.
he
I loved
is.
his comments after the game. I just get nervous when it happens because whether it was in the Czech Republic, whether it was fighting Brady Tkachuk in preseason last year, whether it was in the World Championship a couple years ago, it's just not a strong suit of his game. Sometimes it's just the act of doing it, and I get it, but it would be nice if he was even more effective when doing it. So,
He needs some
um,
lessons. I
kudos to
feel like
him.
if
Yeah,
he got some lessons, he's got the size, the reach, and the mentality. He just he gets off balance a lot.
yeah.
That's what always makes me nervous. Guys falling backwards like that. It's like
Yeah, the back of
asking
your
for
head,
trouble.
and that was the same thing with it's unfortunate that sometimes he fall like, you see it too often. It's like, oh, like when
It's
he
a
fought
balance
Kachuk,
thing. I think
remember? Yeah,
he needs, like I said, there's the art of fighting is probably lost in a lot of ways, like, in terms of how to
yeah.
actually do it and be good at it. And so if you got a little bit of an edge and you found a way to get good at it, not even, the physical act of throwing punches, but maintaining balance and some of the strategy involved. If he's gonna do it, he should figure that out.
Let's go back to Friday's game real quick. Matthias Samuelsson comes out, and that's a pair of goals in that one. And that's not the only moment this season where I think that we're saying, "Okay, Samuelson's a guy that seems to be getting it." Defensively, he's blocking a fair amount of shots. He's not costing the team with bad giveaways. At least, he's not perfect. I'm not saying that, but really good to see Samuelson's game 9 games in. Number one, he's been reasonably healthy. There's always going to be those concerns there with this guy. If you go back and look at his NHL resume, there's always a risk of him getting hurt. But where are you at with Samuelson right now? I think that he's one of those elements of the game that's helped stabilizing the team defensively, keeping them in games. He and Jason Zucker looks like leading the team, goals above expected, 1.7 goals above expected for Matthias Samuelsson. I'm not sure we had that on our early season bingo cards here for the Buffalo Sabres.
Yeah, I think goals above expected would also, like, apply to goals above what Matthias Samuelsson expected, it seems like, because he was definitely surprised on Friday night. He was getting a kick out of it. I think at the time he was tied with Tage Thompson, in goals maybe, or maybe one behind him or something. So he
Yeah,
was, this early in the season kind of among the team leaders in goals, but it's really more than that. Like you said, he's been good on the penalty kill, and he's playing that game that he played a few years ago. I think there's probably some element, he said on Friday night that confidence, his confidence, he's playing with a little more swagger. And he said when you don't have the confidence, it can be really hard to find it over the course of the season. So I think he's just found a way to manufacture it, like come into this season and just have a little bit of attitude and a little bit of confidence. I think it starts to snowball when you play physical, when you're getting into it after the whistle, you start to feel a little bit more of it. So they shuffled around the defensive pairs a little bit and had him up with Darlene, I think maybe as a way to try to get Darlene going.
yeah.
Um, and give him an old partner back. So something to watch because as we brought up, maybe Kesselring comes back and isn't, right away Owen Power's partner like we had penciled in because Power Timmins seems to be kind of this sturdy little pair that they got going. Timmins has been, I mean, if you're talking about who's been the best defenseman for the Sabres this season, I think you can make a case for Connor Timmins. I think Timmins and Samuelson are sort of in that mix as far as who's been the steadiest for these guys. And
Yeah.
that was penciled in as your third pair. So it speaks to the depth that they have and what they could be when they're fully healthy. So nice game from Samuelson for sure. And good to see Byram get on the board too
Yep.
on Saturday night, because he was the one that went down to play with Metza. Because Samuelson got bumped up, it was Byram, you know, going all the way down to the third pair playing with Metza. Obviously, they're rotating five in some
Yeah.
cases too, which goes back to the idea that all these guys need to be able to play with each other and balance things out that way. Still, probably not quite the highest level of Rasmus Dahlin yet, but asked about that before the game, Lindy Ruff brought up everything that happened in the summer, which I
Yeah.
think was good that Lindy Ruff brought that up. I mean, we've talked about it a few times, and I think it was good on the coach to just publicly put that out there as like everything he went through. It's natural that maybe the first month or so of the season might not be perfect, but to Darlene's credit, it's not, not exactly. It's not like it's a lack of effort, right? Like he's putting it all out there. I think there's just been moments where he doesn't look as sharp with the puck as he usually does, and kind of difficult to imagine even playing with everything that's on his mind, with his fiance still back home in Sweden recovering. So I think I would expect him to find it eventually, but wanted to call that out. I know we had some people mention that also in the comments of our last video when we were talking about Darlene. Certainly not
It's
something we've
assumed.
forgotten about, right? We haven't forgotten
Well,
about it. And it was good
it's
that Lindy
assumed.
Ruff
We
brought
just
it back
don't.
up.
Yeah, we don't mention it every time we're talking
Right.
about the Sabres, but maybe we could mention it a little more frequently than we have. But to me, it's assumed, right? Like we all know what the situation is, but yet you have to comment, analyze the on ice performance, and that's kind of where I'm at with it. But yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think he'll settle in, he'll get dialed in. It's a new world for him, and it's certainly a new world, a new life for his girlfriend. She is fiance,
Fiance now.
girlfriend,
Yeah.
fiance. It's a new life
Yeah.
for her. So, and thus it's a new life for Rasmus as well. So no, I get it. But things are starting to come together. I think after this weekend, 3 or 4 points. Tage Thompson has reclaimed his mantle atop the Sabres points leaderboard. He's now leading the team. When we did the rundown last week, it was Benson and Quinn, and I think Zucker. I can't remember who were the three. Oh no, Doan. It was Doan leading the team. Tuck emerging, showing that leadership, getting in the fight. Talked about that. I think things are really starting to come together for this group. Can't get ahead of ourselves, but I think they're moving in a good direction. Again, 4-4-1, not a bad place for this team to be. And Alex Lyon's been a big part of that. Some other housekeeping notes, unless you want to get into anything else from the weekend, but I do want to mention Radim Murtka was sent back to Seattle from Rochester. It was the most reasonable outcome. I think making that pit stop in the AHL was fine. There was no reason to really keep him there all season long. He had an assist, 7 penalty minutes, a couple shots on goal. I think he had like 3 shots on goal. Yeah.
Got in a
In
fight,
his
right?
4 games. Got in a fight, kept his gloves on. Tuck actually probably looked a little more skilled. At least Tuck got his gloves off. But yeah, he did get in a fight. Mirka did. He didn't get, he didn't decisively lose the fight or anything like that. He's just, you got to get your gloves off, kid. Like it was just like, what are you doing? But anyways, it's part of the learning. But he's back in Seattle. He went back, got an assist in his first game. Seattle Thunderbirds also got Coots back from Vancouver. So they're getting, the Thunderbirds are getting both of their first round players back, and they went out and won their first game together. Merck had an assist, all good there. He's just going to play a ton of work. He's going to be physically dominant. It was the right outcome. I think some people maybe they understand it now, but like there was a faction of fans that didn't want him to go back to juniors. Just from the human developmental side, from the player development side, it's the right move. I think we leave it at that. Do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I think that was how it should have gone, especially with the minutes he was getting in Rochester, right? Like you'd rather him play, I think, the big role
Yeah.
and all situations than even have to feel like you're maybe forcing him more minutes than he's ready for in Rochester. Like the role he was going to play in Rochester that you could see in the first handful of games is like get him back to junior. Good that he got a taste. Good that he got an extended taste, really, with the preseason, all those games in Buffalo, and then gets
Yep.
a little bit of AHL time. It's the best of both worlds, I think. There's no rush, especially with a defenseman, to have him playing in the AHL. I think he'll develop just fine out there in Seattle.
A bigger takeaway from the weekend of games, Tyson Kozak goes down with an inch. Kozak has been an incredibly important piece to this team to start the season. Losing him now because there was a little bit of a discussion going on Saturday. Who were the Sabres going to call up from Rochester to fill that void? Ultimately, they elected to stay big in the bottom half of the lineup and bring Dunn back up. But Hellenius that Friday night, 2 goals, 2 assists. He had the overtime winner again on Saturday. He's slowly making a case to get himself maybe some looks at some point here. Were you surprised at the recall of Dunn, or was it just par for the course with Lindy? I think what you're going to see, because you're going to have Rosane, you're going to have Hellenius, it's going to be the role that the Sabres need to replace is likely going to dictate who they call. It's not always going to be best guy going.
That's what I felt like I shouldn't have been surprised on Saturday. Friday night I was writing and I thought, I threw a note in there about Kozak obviously getting hurt and added on a note about Hellenius having 2 goals and 2 assists. Like, hey, it might be time you got a hot hand here. You could use some offense. But given the situation, Dunn did make sense in that it is, that opponent, the Leafs, they were, and you saw it on Saturday night, they have a bit more of an edge to them maybe than, a few years ago. They've sort of been
Yeah.
building towards that. McCabe was sort of all over the place, being chippy all night. And, having a bigger guy in there made sense. I also like the way Dunn's playing when he comes
Mhm.
up. I actually appreciate that Dunn was in there instead of Geertsen because I feel like Dunn can do what Geertsen can do in terms of fighting, and he can also give you some useful minutes. So it made some sense. Depending on how these injuries shake out, though, there would potentially be an opportunity to get Hellenius up. The idea that the window is closing, as Lindy mentioned a few weeks ago, I don't know. It depends how quick Greenway can get back. There still hasn't really been any definitive timeline on that. Kozak's out at least a week, maybe more. Danforth and Norris aren't coming back anytime soon. So, it could depend on how they feel about Ostlund and what they're getting out of him.
8
And they're
minutes and 39 seconds of ice for Ostlund on Saturday.
and I think he had 9 something on Friday, so not a lot. And they certainly don't want to be in a position where they're rushing Hellenius, but what they get out of Hellenius is definitely different than what they get out of Ostlund in terms of physicality and, you know, tenacity on the forecheck. I think there's, bump them to wing if you want to. There's some flexibility there. I still have my eye on Hellenius. I'd like to see he'll get games this year, I think, at some point. It may not
Yep.
be soon, but I wouldn't mind it if it was.
All right, it's Monday morning. I'm going to get you out of here. Before we do, coming off the Kozak mention, quick injury update to set the table to start this week of the season here. What are we looking at here with guys like Greenway, Kesselring, Bryson, all those guys? Just quick injury rundown. Any notes you have on those guys?
Bryson, I think, should be getting close. He was back at practice, and, when you're back at practice that quick after a concussion, usually it's a good sign. So I wouldn't be surprised if he can get back in there, which probably means Metz is going back down. I think probably for the best in terms of just how this depth shakes out. Kesselring, I would say Tuesday is optimistic. I feel like Thursday or Saturday probably makes a little bit more sense, but we'll have a better idea later today at practice. where he's at, how he recovered from that skate on Friday. Thursday would be a good little spot for him. New Hampshire boy, Northeastern guy, Boston being his first game. That would be pretty fun for him. Greenway is sort of the mystery. They're taking it slow there, and Lindy
Yeah.
Ruff. It feels like one day we'll just get an update like, yeah, he's good to go. But Lindy Ruff hasn't been locked in, committed to anything in regards to Greenway.
I think they said no time frame is what
Yeah, no
they're
time
the
frame, which is
terminology,
probably
right?
because of what he's dealing with. They want to make 100% sure so that they're not getting 3 games out of him and then he's back on the shelf.
Mm,
So, still a few weeks away on Danforth, and obviously Norris is probably a month and a half away, but have seen Norris
yeah.
walking around. He was with the team on Saturday night in Toronto. So, uh, that's good at least. But
Norris was what, 8 weeks as of October 13th. So yeah, another month and a half, and maybe we see
yeah,
that. That would be a huge get. I know you had more the Greenway thing, losing Kozak because they did put Kozak on IR, which
so
makes
he's at
sense,
least
I
a
think,
week,
right?
and
So he's at least a week. Getting Greenway back would be just his length and his defensive acumen. That would be really huge for the team if they could somehow get him in before Kozak, to kind of fill that Kozak void a little bit. Then you're not relying on, Oslin, Dunn, Hellenius, like but I
yeah.
get no time frame, but it's just, I'm connecting those two. It would be nice. It'd be ideal for Lindy, but I know you had more before we get out of here.
No, that was pretty much it, I think. Greenway, we'll see. I mean, practice today should give us a better indication of where some of these guys are at, and then Ellis, right? We'll see what's up with that back, and if that's something that was just a blip or something that might keep him out.
Not pulling any alarms yet on Colton House. I guess we'll see. Storylines are abound to follow up on this week in Saberland. Matthew Fairburn, do your plugs, and we'll get on out of here to start this Monday.
Yeah, you can find everything I write at theathletic.com/sabres. Like the video and comment on the video to help the algorithm and Chris's personal happiness algorithm as well.
All right. For Matthew Fairburn, you can follow everything he does at theathletic.com/sabres. For the production crew who's going to refill my coffee because I have a long day ahead of me, Kris Baker. Thanks, everyone, for checking out the podcast. We'll see you again next time.